Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sherry Southe, and I am the safety coordinator for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, NYMTC. And today I'd like to welcome you to this virtual public forum on safety related to connected/automated vehicles. And your phone lines will be muted, but the chat pod will be available for comments and questions, and NYMTC staff will be monitoring the chat box. Let me give you a brief background on our SAWG group. The purpose of the SAWG, of the Safety Advisory Working Group, is to facilitate interagency discussion and exchange information on safety among the region's transportation agencies. The working group advises NYMTC Program, Finance, and Administration Committee on issues dealing with safety, as well as enhancing and expanding safety considerations in all aspects of NYMTC's process. And for today's focus of today's meeting, we'll be looking at safety and connected automated vehicles. So today we will be hearing a federal overview on the development of safety policies and the concept of operation for connected and autonomous vehicles. And that will be followed by a roundtable discussion of state and local perspectives and an audience polling exercise. So we're going to go right into the agenda, and we will be having a presentation from Mr. John Hardin of the USDOT FHWA Office of Transportation Management, Connected Automated Vehicles, and Emerging Technologies Team Leader. Brief info on John. John leads the automated vehicle initiatives for FHWA that support the safe and effective integration of automated vehicles into the U.S. roadway system. John has expertise covering all aspects of connected and automated travel that includes vehicle connectivity, infrastructure, operations, institutional, policy, testing and evaluation, and regulation. John has worked on both the roadway and vehicle aspects of the connected vehicle and automated vehicle issues. John holds a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of Pittsburgh and a Master of Public Administration from George Mason University. Let's welcome John Hardin. John?
Okay, hello everyone. I'm glad to be here this afternoon. Thank you for the introduction. Let me start sharing my slides. Okay. And you can see the presentation mode, right?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay. What we're going to do today is that with this presentation, I'm going to update you on all our automated vehicle kind of activities that are taking place across FHWA. And this, as Sherry was saying, this is all about understanding the safe and effective integration of AVs into our roadway system. And just a little bit more background, one of the things we have currently is a lot of uncertainty because we don't understand how automated driving systems, the upper levels of automation, are going to operate yet. They're still working that out. And also, how that may impact our roadway infrastructure, the operations, the roadways, anything you can think of in our roadways. Let me get right to the presentation. So first, I'll discuss something about the vision development. And this is discussing how a joint vision among road providers and industry can be achieved so we can look at this road ADS integration. What we want to do is identify how we can support jointly defining this vision. Then we'll get into a little bit about cooperative driving automation, another kind of functionality that combines connectivity, automation, and coordination. CARMA is what we call this research platform we use to develop cooperative driving automation. We'll talk about road automated vehicle analysis, modeling, simulation, and testing capabilities as we try to understand and address this uncertainty. We'll look at the safe system approach, other federal highways activities, and then I'll end with we have this congressional study we're tasked to do on impacts on roads from ADS. So first, let's discuss this vision. Developing an initial concept of operation is jointly described as first stage vision. And this first stage, what we mean about this integration is we have mixed traffic. We have human drivers and automated driving systems. So what we're trying to do is set a foundation to understand what's in this vision, how we can move it forward, because as we look forward to the future, we'll know more about the automated driving systems, and we'll be able to think about what additional capacity capabilities will be present as we move down this continuum of integration, cooperation, and full automation. One of the things we're doing to support this is identifying what we know now as kind of the initial needs for ADS integration into our roadways. And we do that by looking at different areas and different perspectives. The first perspective, you can see the different icons up here, is the targeted outcomes. We want a safe system. We want an efficient operational system. We want an interoperable system, and we want equitable benefits and impacts. But on the other side, we also have 4 categories that kind of provides us with 8 use cases. So we're looking at freight and package delivery. We're looking at individual travel and community, transit, and agency operations. All these outcomes and use cases enable us to identify what are the different components, elements of road ADS integration. And you can see it all coming down into the last box. And what it's saying is basically this culminates in us being able to have what we need to collectively understand and talk about road ADS integration. Moving to the cooperative automation, one of the things that we found in initial research is that automated vehicles working with infrastructure can first reduce fuel consumption by 20% at intersections, double the capacity at existing lanes, and achieve fuel savings of 10%. So that's some of the reasons why we're pursuing automated vehicles and this integration. We move to cooperative driving automation, and you can see we have Society of Automotive Engineers standard on this, J3216, and basically describes the machine-to-machine communications to enable cooperation between vehicles with driving automation, other road users, infrastructure such as traffic signals and work zones. To sum this up, it brings together automated driving systems, connectivity, and coordination. So how can this help? Basically, it provides information from the infrastructure through wireless connectivity that can enhance the sensing perceiving of the road environment under various scenarios and conditions. So we have an automated driving system, and from the infrastructure, the automated driving system can think about things like work zones, traffic incidents, these other complex type of roadway environments. And to support that, this is a very busy slide, but this is the Karma ecosystem. And the simple kind of explanation of this is that Karma is the Federal Highways multimodal open source software platform for collaborative research and development of cooperative driving automation. So we can use this to understand how cooperative driving automation can enhance safety, efficiency, and capacity of the transportation system. We have different vehicles we use. First, you see that small one in the upper left is the 1/10 scale model. We have basically passenger cars, trucks, and specialty vehicles. One thing I want to say about the 1/10 is that this is basically it's just an interesting component is that it's scaled down. It supports initial investigation of future research and development concepts, and the scale down is more cost effective to investigate some of these initial challenges. But it also helps us develop a larger research community. So we're hoping academia, and this supports developing professionals of tomorrow. We move into analysis, modeling, and simulation of connected and automated vehicles. And what we're doing here, we're collecting a lot of data on basically anything that's out there running, so we can understand connected vehicles and automated vehicles. And automated vehicles in this case includes automated driving assistance systems, so lower levels of automation, and then the higher is automated driving systems. Anything we can find data on, we're trying to collect that, and then we use that to understand their characteristics and develop algorithms that can represent these characteristics in modeled and simulated road environments. And all this helps us work together, understand, especially the road providers, to assess the impacts and strategies that you can use connected vehicles and automated vehicles to improve system performance. I already talked about the 1/10, but what this slide here is about what we call cave in a box, or connected automated vehicle support services. So this helps and it supports technical staff develop the skills and knowledge they need to configure, implement, and operate intersection and mobile connectivity units that broadcast and receive messages such as signal phase and timing and the map of the intersection. So you have two kits, as you can see. You have one kit that's for a vehicle and then another kit that's for the intersection. And it provides step-by-step instructions that facilitates configuring each kit so they can establish that connectivity and make sure that all the messages and the confirmed exchange of messages. So this gets you one step ahead of understanding all this technology. Going further into more simulation and testing, we have what we call the virtual open innovation collaborative environments for safety, or VOICES. And this is a proof of concept, which will be basically a distributed virtual environment that will enable virtual collaboration among participating entities. And that could be a public sector, private sector, state, local governments, anybody involved in this area. And what it does is help, especially in the private area, it protects the intellectual property of the various components in this, but it still then helps us then collaborate on an environment for research and interoperability testing, especially for the cooperative driving automation applications. Moving to safety, I don't know if any of you have seen this before, but this is in the bipartisan infrastructure law. The safe system approach is a kind of a new paradigm. And the fundamental objective here of the safe system approach aims to eliminate fatal and serious injuries for all roadway users by accommodating human mistakes and keeping impacts on the human body at tolerable levels. So what this does is facilitate a holistic system approach to understanding needs and gaps, and that needs to be addressed to realize road ADS integration. Plus, just everything we're thinking about as we move forward in a new transportation ecosystem. This helps us all, as I said, in road ADS integration also. One of the things that my colleagues in the safety office are looking at is the safety countermeasures. And they initiated the study to understand the effectiveness of those current countermeasures and the interaction with an automated driving system. There's many questions to be asked about regarding whether these countermeasures can be used by and support automated driving systems. And you got to think about things like rumble strips or roundabouts. So can an ADS use those in any way? Will it impact the way they behave on the road? Now, what I'm going to do here is just go through some other activities a little bit quicker than those main ones, and just say some of the things we've been doing. First one's here, the Cooperative Automation Transportation Coalition. As you can see up there, I have the past kind of structure, and what they are right now in is a 2-year evaluation period to determine how to reconfigure and address add stakeholders position this coalition to better address emerging issues regarding automated driving systems, but also related to such areas of connectivity, electrification, and air mobility, which has been being talked about. One question here is to make sure we can establish a sustained road provider and industry collaboration. The next one on the right here, collaborative research framework for automated driving systems, developers, and infrastructure owners, operators. As you can see here, down the middle is just your academic test development sequence. And what we did is put this collaboration wrapper around it that identifies collaboration aspects you might have to deal with when you're dealing with public and private industries, like common ground or whose roles and responsibilities and things like what may be proprietary or not. The next area is what we call roadway elements framework, inventory, and assessment methodologies. What we've heard from a lot of people is we have road providers and automated driving system developers trying to talk about the roadway elements and features. And a lot of times they don't talk about them the same way. So what we've done in Federal Highways is initiated a framework development, provides a baseline of how we define and basically describe the various roadway elements. And we want to use this, and the next steps are to use this with all the stakeholders, the industry, other road providers, and just get more of a consistent understanding of roadway features, how we define them, whether they're components. And we're hoping that what's going to happen from this is we can collaborate more. We can hopefully get some information from the industry about the roadway elements that will support automated driving system navigation. And then from this inventory, categorize and then investigate and produce some assessment methodologies so an IOO can use these to understand what they may want to do in the roadway environment to accommodate an ADS, but also in investment strategies. The next area is the feasibility of changeable roadway environment capabilities. I don't know how many of you have ever been to a test track, but a lot of times you have maybe an urban environment, a highway environment, whatever. This objective of this project is to evaluate the feasibility of developing realistic and easily changeable mock roadway features, like the curb, pavement marking, which can facilitate rapid staging of different roadway scenarios at basically test facilities, so we can do more and understand more how an automated driving system interacts with the roadway environment, and think about maybe how we present the roadway environment and think about features there, and how we may think about developing features in different ways. One of the areas is automated driving systems and traffic regulations. We initially identified challenges associated with translation of traffic regulations, rules of road, so they can be used by automated driving system equipped vehicles. Yet we developed a prototype data format and conducted some proof of concept through simulations to see, using simulations that basically use automated driving system kind of software, and see how we can provide the information of a various rule, like no turn on red, and make sure that the automated driving system recognizes that and acts accordingly. ADS developers all want them to be in compliance with traffic laws. One of the next steps here is to figure out how we progress with this, that we identify the challenges. Next, we're going to develop a playbook, what we call playbook, to support the voluntary development of traffic regulation data specifications with all the different stakeholders we have identified, from traffic administrators who administrate the traffic laws, to those law enforcement who enforce them, and the ADS developers who want to be in compliance with them. The next area is digital infrastructure. So from an agency standpoint, we're developing an understanding, a framework to discuss digital infrastructure that supports the transportation ecosystem. Part of it is we're doing it because it does support road ADS integration. So we're producing this initial framework to facilitate collaboration with the road providers and the automated driving system developers. And what we hope this evolves into an understanding of what we may consider in the digital infrastructure. Some of the things we think about is not only just automated driving, but other technologies in the data, and the data sets, like work zone data set and the traffic regulations data set. Now we're moving into the new study, Impacts on Roads from Automated Driving System. This was tasked to us by Congress in the bipartisan infrastructure law. As you can see, they say they want to study on the existing and future impacts of self-driving vehicles. We translate that to automated driving systems as the higher level of automated vehicles as defined by Society of Automotive Engineers. So let's talk about the scope a little bit. The scope, basically they want us to cover existing impacts on, we can almost understand as almost everything. The interstates, the highways, the urban roads, include city and suburban, rural roads, corridors with heavy traffic congestion, and transportation system optimization, or a lot of times we talk about it as transportation system management and operations. The focus, as I said before, is an automated driving system. That's where you're changing out the human driver for the system driving. Now, they also want us to understand and think about policy issues. And they gave us basically 60 days to initiate the study and then a year to get it to Congress. And the big thing here is that when we look at that, it's basically our road system and all aspects of infrastructure and roadway operations they want us to look at. Now, considering the rate of impacts, and this comes from the law, and first they start out with the roadway infrastructure, and now this includes the physical infrastructure, but also the operational infrastructure, traffic control devices, pavement markings. Next is commercial and private traffic flows, and that covers the volumes of traffic or trips on the different roads by commercial and personally owned vehicles, where ADS will drive, and initially with human-driven vehicles. So what does that look like? When we talk about congestion and vehicle mileage traveled, they're asking us, okay, you have now ADS and human drivers. How is that going to impact congestion and our vehicle miles traveled? And then given congestion and the uncertainties of how ADS vehicles will be used, there may be impacts on environment, mobility, and safety. ADS may increase mobility by, it could support various individuals who now have new mobility. That's a good thing, but then we have to address that. And then the primary aspects of all this is, how does this impact road safety? The list on this slide represents the list provided by Congress in the law that identifies all the areas the expert panel they wanted us to convene need to cover. And the areas include traditional transportation entities, safety groups, transportation policy, research, and industry. And what we did was we went and consulted across the USDOT, all the different agencies, and said, hey, what different organizations do you know can cover all these areas? And then we went to those organizations, we asked for panel members. We established a panel of 26 experts and held 3 meetings during May and June this summer, collected feedback on the impacts in relation to the range we discussed before in the previous slide. We also had individual interviews with each of the 26 just to get more in-depth kind of perspectives on what they think were maybe the impacts. And that's one thing, everything came up, it's uncertain. We are not certain how ADS will operate, how their characteristics will be. So it's uncertain. They could have both positive and negative impacts depending on how they're integrated and how they're operated. So that's kind of the overview, and we'll move it back to Sherry and move on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you, John. Any questions for John?
Hi, Sherry. This is Jerry. John, I just had a question on, and it's impossible to predict this, but do you feel that there will be national or federal legislation on automated vehicles at some point in the future?
Like you said, it's difficult to predict. Congress has tried a couple times, but they haven't got anything out. We'll have to see. There's as we and industry move forward, we'll have to see what Congress wants to do with that. I think there are different things in the different grant programs that show that there is interest, that they put that eligible activities in relation to connected vehicles and automated vehicles in various grant programs. So it's a possibility, but like you said, it's hard to predict. They tried a couple of legislative efforts that were, they were in the news and people were talking about them, but they never made it out.
Thank you, John.
We do have a raised hand for someone where phone number 161-432-0330.
Del, can you unmute that line? Okay, done.
The
I
person
think
who raised their hand, the line is unmuted now.
Yeah, she's unmuted, but I think he sent me a message saying it is mistake.
There is someone else, a representative from New Jersey DOT who would like to speak if possible.
Sure. Just a second.
Fidel, he
Questions
has
that can be put in the chat, no worries.
Okay, I'm muted. That's hello, Tora from New Jersey DOT.
Yes. I want to mention something. I won't take much time. I heard that when the Wright brothers in
Hello, Tora. We can barely hear you. Can you speak up a bit? Thank you.
So I had heard when the Wright brothers invented the airplane, it wasn't just the plane that they invented, they also invented the piloting of it. So I was policy. If the also have a policy or new thought of those who are
Tora, I think you're cutting off. We can barely understand you. Okay, we can continue.
Yeah, no,
Tora will write it on the chat. He said that he will write it on the chat. Sorry about that.
Any other observations or questions?
Stephanie, is anything coming in on the chat pod?
Just that the DOT rep will send a chat message for us later on.
Okay.
I have, one question for John. John, this is Bendes from New Jersey DOT. What I would like to know is there something FHWA coordinating with FCC for any specific, licensing band required for the connected autonomous vehicles? Because if you recall, there was, the DSRCs. I'm talking specifically about, connected vehicles. The DSRC, which is already sunset, and there was, recently FCC issued, another rule for the CV2X, that need to be, transferred over to DSRC, and possibly, FCC won't be allowing that band to be utilized for CV2X communication. So I think there is no clear guidance from FCC or FHWA and how other DOT can proceed further with this.
Yeah, we just had in August what we call the V2X Summit, where we brought in industry and a lot of associations, ITS America, and we had a whole day basically workshop on better discussing and understanding where we can move forward with the 30 megahertz that we still have from the FCC and CV2X. And there's a lot of discussions on moving forward. Our Deputy Secretary, Robert Hampshire, for Research, Development, and Technology indicated that we're going to be developing a deployment plan, an initial deployment plan to try to move things forward. So we're in the midst of trying to do that at USDOT. But there was a lot of discussions about FCC and that they need to, this all came out with the first report in order. Now the second report in order we need to get out to give us the operational specifications and parameters for CVIT-X. And then there's a lot of different road providers, State Department of Transportation, who put in waivers to start using CVIT-X, so we can start thinking about how that's going to be implemented and deployed. So there's work going on. There's more to come as we understand better, one, how we utilize the 30 megahertz in the 5.9, upper 5.9 area. Also, the limitations of the 30 megahertz and what we may want to think about identifying as other needs in relation to interoperable connectivity. Do we need other spectrum or not? So there's a lot of things to consider, and we are trying to move forward with a plan.
Thank you.
We do have some questions coming into the chat now. There is a question from Mr. Afshar at, are we going to have a new set of policies and rules for the drivers of the auto? Do we need to train drivers for the automated vehicles?
Well, okay, first you have, in the lower levels of automation, you have advanced driver assistance systems. So these systems can support drivers like forward collision warning, lane keeping. So there has to be some kind of training or anything usually that's provided by the manufacturer when you purchase a vehicle. For automated driving systems, that's what they're trying to develop now. There's a lot of different developers out there who are trying to develop their version of an automated driving system. You may have seen the vehicles in Arizona. There's different companies doing automated trucks. So they're all trying to figure out how their system can perceive the roadway and be safe and efficient in transporting either people or goods. So there's a lot going on out there. Trying to figure out how that's all going to pan out in relation to regulations, and that is another question, because you have that gets into more NHTSA area with the vehicle side. So there's different things going on, and that's going to provide information to see what we think needs to happen next.
Stephanie, we have time for 2 more questions. I think there are 2 more in the chat box.
There is the question from the DOT representative, New Jersey DOT. When the Wright brothers invented the airplane, it was not just the plane that they invented, they also invented the piloting of the plane. Likewise, one wonders if the same should happen for the not only the autonomy of the drive is being invented, but so should new ethics and policies be true for those who are the riders. One cannot leave all responsibilities, and a rider of autonomous vehicles should have a framework of responsibilities. So if you could just address that. Thank you.
I mean, it gets into a little bit of what I was saying before. They're developing automated driving systems where you're not having a human driver at all. Now, there is areas where you might have automated driving systems that you turn on for different, what they call operational design domains, that's where they can operate. But then when they leave that operational design domain somehow, or something in the roadway environment says, no, this is not what I understand, the human driver has to take control again. But if you go into higher levels of automation, at some point there might not be any way for a human driver to take control. They won't have any steering wheel or any other control in the vehicle. So there's been discussions in the past about who's developing these automated driving systems and what are they, how are they programming them? And what is the different programming, I guess you might say morality, or there's all these cases about, I think one of the classic ones is you're at a train switch and you throw the switch and so many people are impacted in one way and so many impacted another way. How do we, who makes that decision in an automated driving? And that's still a debate.
Thank you. Alongside those lines, in terms of safety, a question about crosswalks. If all crosswalks were BAR, continental, then they would be easier to recognize by vehicles. Are crosswalks traffic control devices or street art?
You're getting into a lot of different policy issues. A lot of them, somewhat are covered, being covered with the new the notice of proposed amendment with the MUTCD. Don't want to comment on it too much, but there's a lot of different, what you say, discussions about crosswalks in relation to automated driving systems. What the automated driving system has to do is understand a crosswalk and understand humans or other groups of humans, individual humans. It's all, they can get very complicated. Those in the path of vulnerable road users. So there's a lot of work to still be done. So that one thing you can remember, we have to present the road and they have to interpret the road environment.
Thank you. There was a little clarification on the from the DOT. The so-called perfect autonomous driving vehicle is or would be still a claim. We should be careful with the semantics of autonomy. That was my point. Do we have time for one more quick question, Jerry?
I think we do need to move on, Stephanie. Okay. So I'm going to pick it up now. Hi, everyone. So one of the things we wanted to do, and John, thank you so much for that information from the federal perspective about what's happening at the federal level, what FHWA is doing, what Congress may do or may not do. But of course, states are involved in this discussion and in the regulation of traffic, as well as localities. So we wanted to try to bring some of those perspectives into this discussion, not so much perspectives on what the federal level is doing, but rather what the state and local levels see for their own areas with regard to this emerging technology. So we have John Bassett from the New York State DOT. John, if you could unmute yourself, you'll kick it off and talk about how New York State is looking at these issues with this technology.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And I apologize if I do a little bit of repetitiveness here. We actually had a fire alarm a few minutes ago. So I missed a little bit of what John, at least a question and answer session here, but there's quite a bit to unpack there, even across the whole spectrum of what's trying to be done here, right? So I think what John presented on the Federal Highway Administration side, it parallels a lot of the things that the states are doing, from what my perspective that the states are doing, and certainly here in New York State. It's a big ticket item no matter how you look at this, and you have to take a good hard look at our system, our network as a whole system, and what we are responsible for as an agency and what we need to do and where we need to put our investments. He talked about the safe system approach, and it's an approach we've been taking here for a while with the department. Overall, it just didn't have such a fancy name in the past, right? So some of these countermeasures, the safety countermeasures that are good for all users of the highway are the types of things that we're taking a hard look at. Is what is our current policies with pavement striping, the ability to keep up with, as for instance, cutting back branches that might be overhanging and covering roadway signs. When we start to look at some of these things as to keeping our markings fresh, talk about the crosswalks and the different types of crosswalks and keeping them fresh, bright, reflective, keeping the pavement in good shape. Those are the things that are going to benefit all users of highways, not just those with automated driving systems, but it helps to propel the automated driving systems into the future and keep things going the way everybody is envisioning this going to work. I think there's a couple things I did want to touch on, again, from the New York State perspective itself and how we're doing this. My role, I'm the director at the TSMO Bureau, New York State. I work in the Office of Traffic Safety and Mobility. And a number of initiatives that we've got going on that we're just starting to kick off. One of them is TSMO Connects, we're calling it, where we've got this full-blown effort over the next 5-6 years to get remote connections to almost all of our 6,300 traffic signals that we operate around the state. And this is going to have a big impact on the safety and the optimization of the system. But at the same time, what it's going to do is going to start to provide us with a wealth of data centrally that we can then utilize and to have available to us and to these automated driving systems that are coming on board over the next 10 years or so, plus or minus, right? One of those efforts that's going to tie into this is something we've talked about for a little while here at the department, and we're just about to issue an RFP for this, and we've affectionately called it a TISMO engine, but some people are calling it a data broker, and it's about pulling together all the different data that is currently being collected within the Department of Transportation and data in the future, and how to utilize that data and how to make it available to other users of the system, other users of the roadway, and again, that reaches into this whole topic that we're talking about today. We are starting to put some of our data out there in the Work Zone Data Exchange. We're working in the national effort with that as well too, and trying to see what we have available and what can be made available to other users as well. Things such as more accurate data on the bridge clearances that we have. New York State has a pretty good problem, a pretty solid problem of trucks hitting bridges, because we've got a lot of lower bridges, legacy bridges from years gone by, whether they're railroad bridges, or bridges on our parkways, which technically trucks are not allowed on, but they still get on there one way or another. And so trying to get this information out there to the users of the highway, and then the different systems that are available, and certainly the safety systems is how we're looking at moving forward. There's another effort that we've got going on within the Office of Traffic Safety and Mobility, and this is sort of a holistic effort, is this strategic plan review of our framework of how we're organized. This gets into another part of the effort that John kind of briefly alluded to, is, how do you look as an organization to be able to tackle this in the future? Our agency was set up in the 50s, and the world has changed quite a bit, as you all know. So the stoic civil service, the way things are operated in the state, doesn't necessarily work when you start looking at systems like this. So we really are keeping an eye on the landscape. Our systems are still evolving. We know that. We know other systems are still evolving. We are not making necessarily a heavy investment in some of the whiz-bang systems that are being tested around the country. We're kind of taking a wait-and-see attitude with some of those, because we're putting our money where we think we can be most effective right now to all users of the highway. And so that's kind of how we're looking at this right now. Definitely keeping an eye on what's going on. And the one last thing I will mention is, John talked a little bit about federal policies towards some of these safe systems, and we do look forward to getting that kind of encouragement that helps us develop our budgets accordingly and put our money, where our mouth is when it comes to that kind of a thing. So very brief, I know, but that's kind of how we're looking at this as we look at the things that the Federal Highway Administration was talking about as well too. And that's, Jerry, that's what I had. I don't know if you have questions or.
Well, actually, something came in on the chat pod that I do want to run past you, and I understand that you don't work for the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles, but the state does regulate drivers, and it was an interesting question about how is that going to change? Theoretically, if you had a fully autonomous vehicle, there would be no driver. But before we get there, there'll be different levels of this technology. And so do you have a sense that there'll be any change to how drivers are trained or regulated given this technology?
You got to think that that's going to be part of the puzzle, right? And it is a big puzzle. It's true. New York State Motor Vehicles is not under the Department of Transportation. Other states it is. Other states, they also have the police agencies, the enforcement agencies as a cousin or brother agency. We're an independent agency from the Department of Motor Vehicles. Several years ago, when we did some initial testing within this state of some autonomous vehicles, it was very heavily laden towards exactly that. What is it going to look like as far as motor vehicle regulations and laws and how it affects a driver and impacts a driver, and towards the enforcement part as well too. And in fact, the Department of Transportation was almost secondary within those tests, because it was really looking at, what are these vehicles going to be capable of doing and how are we going to regulate it. So without a doubt, New York State has got that on its radar for the future evolving systems.
It's an interesting question. Thank you, John. Since this is a roundtable, we did reach out to colleagues in New Jersey and Connecticut, and we had a tough time with schedules. And last minute, several of participants from New Jersey DOT offered to participate, which is great. I was dealing with Wasif Mirza, but I see that he's not on the call. I know that he had a schedule conflict. So absent Wasif, Bindesh Patel is on. Actually, Bindesh, you asked the question before. Can you give us any perspective from New Jersey DOT in terms of what your state might be doing in this area?
Uh, sure, Gary, and thanks for inviting us.
Sure. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Wasif, he had a conflict. He may join later. I'm not sure, but myself and Hiren Kumar Patel, we are representing New Jersey DOT. So what John from New York DOT, said, we are kind of, the same, we are also following the same, strategy for now. But I would like to, take a step back and, I would like to explain what New Jersey DOT is specifically doing right now with, just connected vehicles, not, autonomous vehicles. So for connected vehicles, we had been testing that technology for quite a bit long time. It's around, more than 3 or 4 years we had been testing. We had a lab environment set up at the College of New Jersey, and where we are, bringing in different manufacturers, including, Cisco and, other, manufacturers, vendors who help us to integrate, all this data into, into some kind of transferable form where we can analyze the data, and then we can actually install on our roadways. So we did after testing for a long time, we did put out 5 pilot installations on our roadway, which were arterials, which were basically RSUs communicating to the OBUs, and we had been successfully able to transmit SPAT, BSM, and team messaging. And then recently we had been now going full force construction. We have 2 active construction contracts currently. One is in South Jersey, which is 4322 project, where we are installing 46 RSUs, and Central Jersey on Route 1 295, which is combination of arterial and interstate. We are installing around 76 RSUs. Now, what
Bindesh, just
yes.
For those who don't know, what does RSU stand for?
So those are roadside units, which basically transmit those messages to the onboard units, which will be housed into the car. So basically, that will give the drivers or motorists information on their dashboard saying that the signal timing, for example, the SPAC message is signal timing message. So it will give motorists, if they are equipped with the onboard unit, RSU infrastructure DOT has to install, but the onboard units, basically the car manufacturer has to install, and some of the brand name cars had been already started installing. So basically, the motorist will get messages on the car that if it's sped, the signal timing, after 10 seconds it will turn on green, or after 10 seconds it will turn on red, such kind of messages which is sped. Now, BSM is basic safety messages. So if there is any safety information which DOT or any local police department or anybody wants to transmit to the motorist saying that, hey, this is a safety message, that can be also received by the motorist on their screen. So it's basically you will have a tablet where on your dashboard or a small screen where you can see those kind of messages. So, that's what we are installing. I said, on two active construction contract, one contract in South Jersey. We are really close for testing. Within next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be starting level A testing for that. All the installation and construction work has been completed. As I was talking with John from FHWA, the FCC license, had, we had some setback with the FCC license and it got delayed because of the new FCC rule. But however, what John mentioned, yes, we are filing for the waiver from FCC. And meanwhile, we had already received approval from FCC for the experimental license, which is for 6 months. So at that corridor, we had been, beginning, testing within next 2 or 3 months. Another corridor, Route 1, 295, which is combination of arterial and interstate. It's slated for completion next summer of 2023. So, that's kind of, Jerry, I think it's in the nutshell. And one, specific thing I would like to mention what, John from FHWA mentioned about the safety countermeasures. So what we are doing currently at New Jersey DOT on one of this Route 1 295 contract, we are installing wrong way driving system on 11 critical interchanges or on off ramps where we had identified that there are recurrence of wrong way driving, or simply it could be just a geometry of the ramp where motorists are taking a wrong turn and entering the wrong way. So that's under construction, and hopefully next summer we will be testing that system, and the plan is also to go, statewide or maybe, corridor specific on other locations on Route 80 where there are major incidents of wrong way driving. And wrong way driving system would also include, roadside units. So that would also notify, nearby motorists if they have onboard units, they will notify that somebody is, coming wrong way, so they can watch out for that. So that's major trend which we are taking over at the New Jersey DOT. I think
Dinesh, thank you. And it's interesting because the connected part of this technology, connected vehicles, oftentimes the technology is helping to improve safety. But the autonomous vehicles present safety issues themselves. So it's an interesting bifurcation there of improving safety through technology and then making sure technology is safe. Let me ask you first, and then John Bassett, the same question I asked John Harding, which is, have there been any attempts at your state's at the level of your state legislature to draft legislation related to autonomous vehicles at this point?
No, I'm not aware, that legislation is moving forward with any of such drafting legislation. I think there was a discussion last year, but I think the legislators, I think they haven't moved forward with deciding on any of that thing. I think they are waiting on guidance from USDOT or some higher level, and that will set up the framework, and then they would like to decide or put some kind of legislation at the state or local level.
Okay. John Bassett, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, the legislation that originally allowed some of the testing to happen, again, I'm talking several years ago, as far as I know, that is the only legislation that is out there. I think it's still valid. It's kind of cumbersome for the testing to take place because it requires police escorts front and back, I believe, and in all kinds of insurance, of course, and things like that. So there was sort of a demonstration test that took place after that legislation was passed, but I don't think anything much more has gone beyond that. Now, having said that, I know the governor's office did convene a group of the different agencies involved, again, maybe 4 or 5 years ago to look at, what potentially would be needed with legislation. That's where we talked about a little bit about the driver side of the equation and how to tackle that, and how the state police would be involved in the Department of Transportation. What Bindesh was referring to with the roadside units and responsibilities of the different agencies. And I think out of that, those discussions, it was sort of one of those, boy, we've got a lot to tackle here kind of equation. But I don't, as far as I understand, there has been not even any legislation really seriously considered recently. Could be wrong on that. I don't have the full picture on that, but I haven't heard that. So.
Well, if you haven't, given your role, if you haven't heard it, it probably isn't there.
Probably is. It probably isn't there, but you never know, right?
You never know. You never know. So thank you to you both for the state's perspective. And I just we have a couple of minutes before we're going to go into our next item, which is actually an interaction with our audience members. But Sherry and I work for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, which is a metropolitan planning organization. And what that is basically a regional council of governments. So we have counties on our board, we have the state, we have the MTA, we have the city agencies on our board and so forth. And what, our planning is trying to anticipate the emergence of this technology, both connected and autonomous. And we do cover it in our current regional transportation plan, but I can't say that there's a lot of information there about, recommendations for the future. Other than to monitor what's developing and to work with regulatory agencies. We have also spent some of the federal money that comes through NYMTC with the city to look at a connected vehicles pilot that they've undertaken. So there's some more localized work being done there. Dave Berend is also on our call today, and he is the acting executive director of the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, which is the MPO across the river in northern New Jersey. Dave, I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot and just ask if, in NJTPA's planning process, working with your members, how has connected and autonomous vehicles come into the planning process in any way?
All right, thanks, Jerry.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can say a few words. I think, at the Metropolitan Planning Organization level, we maybe are looking at this a little differently. Certainly, we're encouraging the deployment of this technology and the testing of this technology to the greatest extent possible in our region. As you heard, NJDOT is doing a lot. I should also mention that, for a local perspective, Middlesex County, which is in our planning area, where Rutgers University and New Brunswick are, it has really taken a lot of initiative on connected and automated vehicles. They have it's called their Smart Mobility Testing Ground in New Brunswick, and they've really been kind of ramping things up over the last couple of years. They actually got it started with a grant from the New Jersey EDA, the Economic Development Agency. So, it's interesting. I know there's a lot of attention paid to federal funds for this and federal grants and private sector. This was sort of a different way that they got it started, and and I know NJDOT has supported it as well. And they've sort of been in a more urban, real world environment. They've been slowly rolling out some of this technology. Upgrading intersections, seeing how the live data streaming from each intersection, can be used ultimately to provide the necessary information to vehicles. Now, there might not necessarily be that many connected vehicles there now, but they're anticipating that, and they're doing other things down there as well, such as I'm not exactly sure what the time frame for this is, but they're going to have an automated shuttle that does a sort of hospital and healthcare and pharmaceutical centers route there in downtown New Brunswick. It's really a pretty interesting example of a local initiative. It's basically Middlesex County working closely with CATE, the Center for Advanced Infrastructure and Technology at Rutgers University, as well as NJDOT, and some other private sector support. And we've been getting regular updates from them as they've continued to upgrade more of the intersections with the necessary technology and kind of get this sort of downtown testing area of how the data can flow and how these things can communicate with each other. So that's a specific example. I'd say on the sort of larger metropolitan planning perspective, the way we're looking at this technology is how can this, just like other transportation technology or other transportation improvements, basically how can it help us fulfill the vision and the planning goals that our long range plan has? How can it make travel safer? Does it present opportunities for improving access to transit through last mile shuttles and things like that? Does it present an opportunity to serve people without cars, people of various abilities who may not be able to drive? Ultimately, can this technology help them? We think that it can. We know that the pace is uncertain of when these things are going to roll out, but we are going to look for opportunities for more things like what they're doing in Middlesex County. We're going to be looking very carefully at what's going on in Trenton, which is actually just outside of our planning region, where they have a driverless proposal for driverless shuttle that isn't so much like a fixed route automated vehicle, but sort of a variable route, like a VIA type service, if you're familiar with that. So we're going to continue to look for opportunities to push those things where we can and where it makes sense. And then the last thing I'd mention, because I tend to hear it seems to come up in many of these conversations about sort of what at the local level can folks do to help prepare the transportation system for these vehicles. And it's basic, but it's sort of important and sometimes overlooked, is that basically whenever you're going to say resurface a road or make improvements at an intersection, there was a question I heard just a bit of earlier about crosswalks. I didn't catch the whole thing. That's another example, is upgrade all these, all especially just the markings. Make sure that the markings are bright enough, large enough that that automated vehicle sensing technology can see these things, identify them, and respond to them appropriately. So we certainly encourage that and have made that a priority in our long-range plan as well. So that's just some sort of high-level thoughts on what we're doing and a local example from Middlesex County. So I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thanks very much, Dave. That's very informative.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, and one of the things, what we were facing, and I'm sure you did too, is you're putting together a long-range plan and you're trying to estimate or forecast the impact that this technology might have on demand and on mobility. You touched on several points, where in some cases it could be very helpful. In other cases, it could increase congestion. So it's an interesting time to be a planner and try to anticipate all this stuff.
Yeah, actually, one other thing I'd just add quickly that we've talked a lot about, we've mentioned it, we haven't really drilled down to specifics, again, for a lot of the reasons that you're talking about, is the potential impact on land use. Do automated vehicles create a situation where many more people who maybe would in the current situation prefer to travel generally via transit, but if it's an automated vehicle and they don't have to be 100% focused on driving and they're able to do other things in the car, does that encourage potentially more suburban sprawl in our region, something we've been trying to get a handle on for decades. On the other end, if people aren't bringing personal autos that are theirs and parking them in downtowns, what does that mean? That maybe reduced need for surface parking in a place like downtown Newark, where our office is, which has a huge amount of surface parking in the downtown core. Creates some interesting opportunities for maybe some new and different land use in some of these places. So it's still very wide open and very unknown, and like you said, it does make it an interesting time to be looking at this stuff.
I think the proper term is crapshoot, actually. All right. Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much for offering that. I
Sure.
do.
And Jerry, I'm going to have to hop off to go to something else, but thanks for having me.
Sure, absolutely. Enjoy
Okay.
your something else. I'm going to move into the next portion of the program because I'm looking at the clock. And this is where we're going to be asking the participants to offer some information as part of this. So it's going to be an interactive polling session, and Stephanie Brooks will take it from here. Stephanie?
Hey, everyone. Thank you. So this interactive polling session, just to sort of get your thoughts on automatic vehicles and a variety of other issues. This can be done via your telephone, your cell phone, or on your browser. So we have this sort of introductory slide to get you set up if you're interested in participating. You can respond to the address there, polev.com/sbrook005. Or if it's easier on your cell phone, you text to the number 22333 and then type in the message sbrooks005. If there's any questions, you place them in the chat or you can raise your hand. Because what we do is we'll have a question that will show up on the slideshow and you will respond either using your browser or your cell phone, and you will be able to see your input, your answers show up real time on the screen that you're looking at right here. So what will happen is whether you choose via your browser or your cell phone, you will be shown a screen that says join S. Brooks's meeting. That's me. I'm hosting the meeting. And once you're in the meeting, you can respond to the questions that we show on the screen. So, Jerry, I think I'll just give it a few seconds to let people figure out which way they would like to go in terms of how they'd like to log on. And then when we're ready, I can just start showing the presentation and the questions.
Right. We do have that one practice question, Stephanie. So maybe we
Yes,
want to
we
get
do.
into
So
that.
should I just go ahead and move forward with that, see how it works?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so you should be seeing in a moment a question that said, oh, look at this. What part of the region do you reside in? We've got people answering already, so it looks like you guys are familiar with this. This is fantastic. You should be seeing in real time that a lot of folks live in New York City and New Jersey who are on this meeting today. A few in Long Island, a few other. Looks like no one is having trouble getting in, so this is great. And if there's any questions, raise your hand or throw them in the chat. But it looks like people are doing well. This is fantastic. Great. One from Connecticut. Wow. We've got New York City and New Jersey are neck and neck, and other. So now you see pretty much how it works. So you'll be able to answer the various questions as we move forward. Seems to be slowing down. Jerry, should we just start getting into it or give it a couple more seconds?
I think we should go.
All right. Okay. So our first question related to autonomous vehicles. Oh, someone has raised their hand. Sorry. Mr. Lanny Wexler. Fidel, could we unmute him or her? Sorry. To see if they have questions.
Go ahead, Lanny West. Lanny.
You should be unmuted now. Hello, did you have some questions? There, I see a hand raised, and you're now unmuted. Okay. we've got a Connecticut person. Okay, well, I guess we'll move on. Okay, our next.
Stephanie, one before you go on, I'm sorry. Well, as this question is going, just repeat how you get in via a computer.
Absolutely. So I'll go to the next screen now. So you can go, if you're using your computer, if you're in whatever browser you use, Chrome, Firefox, you go to pollev.com. You can see very small print at the top of the screen, unfortunately, poll everywhere. And you would /sbrook005. You will join the meeting. And once you're in the meeting, you will be able to and also text to the phone number 22333. And oh, someone just chatted that the poll is not working. It states that it's waiting for the presentation to begin. That's very strange. It should, the meeting is definitely happening, and should be the option to join the meeting. Maybe try a different format to get in, maybe via text if the browser isn't working, or vice versa via browser if the.
Another suggestion would be to just try signing into the browser again. Sometimes that makes the technology work for some reason.
We'll keep this up for a little bit. Jump in a little. I still see the hand.
And you're fading out, Stephanie.
Still see the hand raised for Lanny Wexler. I'm not sure.
Well, he didn't answer before, so that must be a mistake.
It's down now. All right. So we just, aside from this one chat question, it looks like most folks are able to respond. Is the volume okay? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, great. It was a mistake. All right. So no worries there. The hand raise was a mistake. So folks are answering. Many people drive a car 5 days a week or more. That is interesting. And then, second place, less than 5 days a week. So this is another sort of more familiarize yourself with the service kind of question. Leave this up for a little bit of time. I hope Barbara Barroso was able to get in again. I apologize if you were not able to before. Okay, Chair, given time, should I just move forward?
Yeah, let's go to the next.
So here are some questions about the car that you use, if it has any of these driver assistance features. This is so fun watching these come up. So there are a lot of different features coming up, except for partial or full self-driving features, which is part of what we're discussing today. Are they?
Oh, but that's okay. These other items are all part of autonomy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
This is really interesting.
But it is interesting that no one has even a partially autonomous vehicle that they're driving.
Forward collision warning, that looks really useful. I wish my car had that. Adaptive cruise control. All right, so I think the responses seem to be slowing down here. So I believe we'll just move on to the next question then.
Yes, indeed.
Right. Okay. So our next question, what safety concerns do you have regarding partial or full self? You can just type in your answer. Sentence, as many words as you like. Idiot. Interesting. So we're getting some really interesting responses here. Of empty cars driving home. That's a funny image. Great responses. Thank you, everyone. There was a really there's an interesting chat response as well about colors. Just make a record of that. I think we're slowing down here, Jerry. Question?
Yeah, agree, Stephanie.
What steps would you like to see taken to ensure the safety of partial or full self-driving technologies? There were some great responses earlier about infrastructure and hacking, various safety features. So great responses here. Regulations and testing and education. Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Fantastic responses. And Jerry, as it seems to be slowing down, I might move to the next question given it's 2:20.
Yep, keep going.
Right. Ooh, that was big font.
Stop shouting.
What role should government play in ensuring the safety of? I saw some earlier. How should government? Great responses coming in here. Wonderful. Insurance, didn't even think about that. Wow, that's a big question. Still getting some great responses.
Another minute or two, and then we'll go on to, I believe the next one is the last one.
Two more. No, three more, but they're brief.
I was way off.
They are Q&A. They're mostly yes and no questions or multiple response. Yes.
Stephanie, you're fading out, but let's move to the next one.
All right. And here, what level of government is most appropriate for ensuring the safety of connected and autonomous vehicles? Some comments earlier about looks like it's
Definitely an intergovernmental view.
right. I think we can move to the next one.
Yes, let's go.
Federal and state keeps growing. All right. Next, this is a question, is yes or no question. Should transportation infrastructure be physically altered? Definitely seems to be more towards yes here. Give it a few more seconds. Seems to be slowing down. And I believe this is the last question. It is a write-in question. If you said yes regarding the infrastructure question, should it be altered? Then how? what are your thoughts of how the infrastructure should or could be altered? And if you answered no, that the infrastructure should not be altered, what was your reasoning for answering? Responses here. Sorry, we go back. There we go.
Stephanie, while we're finishing up, someone did ask in the chat about how this will be used. This is not just an exercise to watch the graphics move, but rather we do take this seriously in the sense of using this as input into the NYMTC planning process. So, this information will be shared as part of the reporting on this particular public session. So all this is very helpful in that regard. I think we're down to the last 3 minutes, so should probably wrap up, Stephanie.
Okay. Yep. Well, I believe this was the last slide. All right. Further questions before we wrap up?
Any last minute questions? Okay, let's go over to Sherry, and Sherry, you can close this out. And thanks everyone for your participation, and thanks for our panelists who shared their information. Much appreciated. Sherry?
Oh, thank you, Jerry. Thanks, everyone, as well. Thank you as well to our panelists. Great meeting we had today. But if you had additional questions that were not answered today, if you do have questions that you would like to have follow-up on, please feel free to send them to me, and I'll make sure that I send them over to the various representatives. And also, as was mentioned in the chat earlier, the presentation from John Hardin will be sent out to everyone today. So thanks again. And like I said, any questions, any follow-ups, please feel free to send those to me, and I'll make sure that they get over to the right people. Thank you. Have a great day. So with that, thank you, everyone.